Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. As always, I am thrilled that you are here. With me today, as he often is our guest co host, Jack Casey. What's going on, Jack?
Not much, man. Just got back into Ohio. Been got my dad's bike, or my dad's old bike, or refurbished last week. So I've been riding that around. Did about 10
Cool.
miles today. It's getting easier. It was tough at first. The first ride I took was about 4.5 miles, and I wanted to collapse and die as soon as I got to my car. So I
Yeah.
get home and I got to carry the bike up a flight of stairs because it's an expensive bike and people steal stuff around here. And
Yeah.
I sat on the steps for about 10 minutes, like, oh God, how am I going to do this? I ended up just like dragging it like you would like a person who's been like knocked out or something, and
Yeah.
finally made it up and then actually passed out for a couple of hours. But
Yeah.
it's
You know
harder
what?
than it looks, man. Like you see the
Oh, I
people on
know.
the trail like flying up and you're just like, oh, that can't be that bad. They've already got the momentum going, but
Yeah.
it's getting the momentum going that's the hard part, and also being horribly out of shape, which I'm trying
Yeah.
to fix.
Well, I am told that once you get used to it, it's just a matter of maintaining it. And it's much easier to maintain once you get that ball rolling. At least that's what I'm told.
Yeah, that's my
So,
goal. Is to be be less fat, and or B, be less out of shape. So,
yeah, they kind of go hand in hand most of the time. But yeah, absolutely.
but
Hey, just to let everybody know, we are live tonight. You might be checking us out on Twitter. You might be checking us out on YouTube. And also, I'm sending a feed to LinkedIn as well. So we're live all those places. We will not be able to interact on all of those platforms in real time. If you have Twitter, we're doing Twitter live. We'll do our best to, I believe Jack is going to try and monitor Twitter, and I'll try to look at it when I can. And at the very least, after the show, we'll try to address as many of the comments as we can. We're going to talk about some interesting things today. We're going to talk about the false memories that you have. And if you don't know what those are, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And that kind of leads us into something called the Mandela Effect. And it really has nothing to do with Nelson Mandela. And we're going to explain what that is, but that kind of goes hand in hand. And we're also going to talk about, just to wrap things up at the end of the show, we're going to try to talk a little bit about what we talked about the last time Jack was here, which is the new interest in the UFO phenomena that's been happening here. It's quite the talk in Washington, D.C., and there's a lot of speculation about what these objects are, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about false memories, just to give the audience some backdrop to this. What a false memory is something that we have all experienced, whether you realize it or not. Literally everyone at one time or another has had a false memory, and you quite may possibly have made mistakes in your life because of them. And they're pretty easy to generate. They can sometimes be generated by dreams, but most often we generate them ourselves. And a good example of it would be, let's say you're getting ready to go to work and you say to yourself, I got to put that report in my briefcase on my way out the door. And in the meantime, you get dressed, your phone rings, somebody from work calls you, something came up, you're in a hurry, you gather things up, go out the door, and you get to work and you open your briefcase and the report isn't in there. And you say to yourself, I could have swore I put that report in there. And it's so vivid. I know I put it in there. I can't believe it. I didn't. And the reason that this happens is because when you said to yourself, I have to make sure that I put that report in my briefcase, you generated a happening in your
Mhm.
mind and it got misfiled into something that you actually did. Okay.
This
And
happens to me about 10 times a week with my car keys.
yes, yeah, that's a pretty, do you have an example of what you do quite often?
Yeah. I usually leave my keys on my kitchen table when I get home because that's just where I've done it for a while.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'll get home from like, buying groceries or doing something else, and I go to stick something in my fridge, and I have the keys in my hand still, so I'll stick them on top of the fridge, and then just forget that they're there. But in my mind, I swear to God, I put them down on the table where I always put them. So this usually leads to about a 10-minute search, and then I find them on top of the fridge or in the fridge one time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I was trying to keep my car starter in a Faraday cage so it wouldn't have a mind of its own or something. I don't know what I was thinking that day, but
Right.
that did happen a couple weeks ago. I left them in the fridge, so I opened the fridge to grab a bottle of water. Hey, there they are.
Yes.
Felt a little dumb.
It's real easy to do. And over time, these can get more complex. I've had this happen like over the years at family get togethers and so on. People will tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes after some years go by, somebody will say, yeah, I remember that. And I know they weren't there. Okay. And I believe what happens in those situations is they've heard that story so many times and they've imagined it happening so many times that as the years go on, they place themselves there at that event.
In a way,
And
it's like a long, drawn out version of telephone. I've seen it
yes.
happen to my family as well.
Hmm. And I sometimes wonder why, or not necessarily why, but I sometimes wonder how these are a factor in criminal investigations, especially when something has happened 5, 10, 15 years ago or longer, and you have trauma involved on top of it. It makes the wading through those waters without evidence that much more difficult because you can have different variations of what happened and who was there and who wasn't, and it can be very complex to sift through. When it's something harmless like forgetting your car keys, we kind of dismiss these things. But in other cases where there's testimony involved, and especially through the passage of time, false memories can be a big problem. So anyway, that kind of leads us into what is called the Mandela Effect, and is you can look this up and research it yourself. I'm going to put it in a way that it's simple to explain and it's entertaining to hear in terms of a podcast. But it is, as I believe the New York Times did something on this a while back in 2019, and they loosely defined it as a recent refinement of false memory that typically refers to pop culture or current events. And what the Mandela effect is, this actually goes back to, I believe this was in 2013. Nelson Mandela died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a lot of people distinctly remember him dying in prison in the 1980s, which of course didn't happen.
Right.
So this takes us to a new level. What the question here becomes is, as we previously just discussed, it's easy to understand how a single individual can have a false memory. But how can you have potentially tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or possibly millions of people have the same false memory? So with that being said, I'll throw it to you, Jack. I know you've kind of checked out this topic before. What are some of the explanations that you have for this?
Well, a lot of them are more subtle, where it's like more of a spelling error. A good example of that is there's a meme about 5 or 6 years ago involving the children's book characters, the Berenstain Bears, where
Okay.
there was like a fight over was it the Berenstein or the Berenstain Bears, and it was just a couple letters were switched in a lot of people's minds. And I'm a
Yep.
terrible speller, man. So if I didn't have spell check, I'd be screwed. So I completely get how something like that works. Another one that was in the link that you sent me was Mother Teresa gaining sainthood while she was still alive, whereas she didn't until after she died.
Yeah.
Um, which again is like a thing that I'm sure that most people probably don't think about at all in their lives, but they think, hey, well, the news media or whoever has called her a saint even after she died. So, and since sainthood is not really well understood by most people who aren't Catholic,
Right.
it's in other cases it could be like kind of media gaslighting, um, which gaslighting is another phenomenon that's kind of related. It's often um, uh, like in abusive relationships, like one person's partner will convince them they did something, where
You
they didn't, and keep repeating it over and over again. It's kind of like a lie becoming the truth after it's been repeated so many times.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you
Also,
to clarify that a little bit, so because a lot of times people hear that word and they pretend like they understand it, but in simple terms, what is gaslighting?
it's just basically implanting false memories, or um, saying that someone did something so that your behavior was justified
Okay.
later on. Like say, oh well, you smacked me in the hand last week when I went to pick up your lighter, so therefore me punching you in the face is perfectly justified because you hit me first when you didn't do it in the first place. I actually had an ex a long time ago who was kind of classic for that kind of thing. Would tell me
Yeah.
that I did a thing that I know I didn't do, like because there was like no way. But then
Right,
after a
right.
while, you kind of start to question your sanity, and
Yes.
you see a lot of the political news media kind of do that a lot nowadays. Like a recent example would kind of be the Benghazi thing, or the
Yeah.
emails thing, like the Hillary's emails. And just if it gets repeated enough, then a lot of people start to question and then accept that new reality after they've heard it
Yeah.
enough times. Um, but one interesting one that I saw on that link you sent me was the Fruit Loops one, like the Fruit
Yes.
Loops cereal. I had to sit and think about that one for a minute. I was like, wait a minute. I used to eat that cereal all the time as a kid. Was it Fruit or Froot?
Yes. And the one that got me for the listeners, if you've ever eaten Jiffy peanut butter, you
Hmm.
haven't.
No.
Because it's Jif.
And I've seen
And
Jiffy referenced on like TV shows, or like in like I think an old you remember Dave Barry? He was a humor columnist a long time ago.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And my
Mhm.
dad and grandpa were huge fans of him. And he we had like all of his books growing up, and he does mention Jiffy peanut butter a few times. I remember it because it was like part of a
Yes.
joke. But
Yes.
yeah.
And another one is Looney Tunes. It's Tunes, just like musical tunes. And people, for whatever reason, maybe because it's cartoon, but they imagine it that it's Toons, Looney
Yep.
Tunes, and it's not. It's Tunes.
A lot of
So
it seems to be kind of like a subtle matrix effect, though, like
yes,
something small, like a couple letters misplaced, or like maybe a different color on a logo, or things like that.
yeah.
And the bigger ones are a lot harder to explain, though. I mean,
Yes, and that's kind of what I was going to get into, getting back to the Mandela effect, because I kind of feel like with the Mandela story, his news and his journey during the 1980s was very well covered. And during that whole prison ordeal and the political, being put in prison for political reasons and all these other things, and that was, that carried on for quite a while. And then as the years went on, if you didn't keep up with that story, when 20 years, let's say, goes by, it's real easy to kind of make the decision in your mind, well, he died there. But of course, a lot happened after he got out of prison, and that's the part that I don't understand, because he became a huge political figure, worldwide figure, and for some reason, people thought he died in prison.
I kind of
So
wonder if more people in America think he died in prison as opposed to South Africa, where he
yeah,
actually
of
lived.
course, sure,
I didn't
and
see any statistics about that. I probably should have looked it up, but just thinking about
yeah,
that right now.
but it does beg the question: how can that many people be specifically wrong? And that, it's not like they all had a million different stories as to what happened to them. They all had the same presumption. So there's been other things that have happened as well, where there's been an enormous amount of people have a false memory, the exact same false memory. So how can this be? Is this something like that's just because the news coverage is hot at a certain time when the story's at its peak, and then it fades away, and then people presume things? And this is, there's a paranormal researcher by the name of Fiona Broome. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly. It's Broome. And she says that sometimes, um, that this could be evidence that we are living in existing alternate realities. And she really likes this theory. And there's others that claim this as well. The reason that so many people can distinctly recall different events or details could be that we're living and I kind of believe that's reaching. I'm kind of the mind, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the UFOs, that you can't remove any particular idea or theory. You can't dismiss it. And that's, I mean, in on some level, this could be possible. And there's a lot of evidence that sometimes what people may mistake for spiritual things and all that are things coming from alternate realities. So that's been proposed before. I would have to say that's a big leap. We need more evidence to say that this is one of the primary causes. But it's an
Time
interesting thing.
travelers.
Yeah. Do you have any opinions about that theory?
Not really. It's an interesting theory. I mean, it's a cool thought exercise. You know, what if, say, time travelers or people who can skip between um, realities are, just kind of acting as trolls. Like, say, some guy broke into the publishing company that published the Berenstein Bears and took half of the books and put Berenstein Bears instead, just
Yeah.
because it would screw with everybody in 2013. I mean, that's funny.
Yeah, it
But
is.
I mean, we don't really have any way to prove something like that, though,
No.
unless like some branch of quantum theory comes out that it turns out that a particle can exist in two types of realities.
Yeah.
Or there's also like the grandfather paradox. What if you went back in time and killed your grandfather? Would you exist still? And if you did, like, would you still be there in the time period, or would you fade away?
Yes.
So it's probably possible there's a multiverse. I kind of like the theory, where
Yeah, I wouldn't.
skip in other
I would have.
realities.
I would have to say that I'm on board with parallel universes for the most part. I'm just to let the audience know I'm a science enthusiast. I would stop well short of saying that I'm an expert of anything, but I enjoy physics, and there's a lot of cases to be made for parallel universes. Absolutely, 100%. As a matter of fact, one of the theories about the Big Bang theory is that two parallel universes collided and
Right.
created another one. So, or an alternate one, whatever the verbiage is that you want to use. So I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that being a possibility. However, I'm not so sure about skipping back and forth between them as easily as science fiction writers claim that it can be done.
Right.
Um, and if you follow some of the theories on this, for example, there's some who suggest that in this particular case, let's forget about Mandela so we don't get too confusing here. Let's say something like you're walking down the street, okay, and you notice a store and they got a TV for sale, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna buy that TV for myself. So you go in there and you buy the TV, but for a moment you hesitate. You say, you know what, maybe I really don't need the TV. Maybe that I should pass on this. Well, there's a theory that says both of those universes now exist. There is the path that you are on where you bought the TV, and there's also the universe that exists where you chose not to buy it. And those two realities run against each other with different consequences. So there's this theory has been this concept has been around a long time in the scientific community. It's not necessarily something that was just conjured up for the Mandela effect. It's being used to explain a lot of different things. I personally believe, as much as I enjoy science and as much as this is theoretically plausible, there's just not enough evidence to point our fingers at it and say this is an explanation for anything. It's theories built on top of theories. And as much fun as it is to, imagine time travel and all these other things theoretically being possible, until we can actually tie the knot on some of these theories, to me, it's too much conjecture. Whether it's scientifically sound or not, it's just too much. Your opinion on this? I know
Oh,
you. I know you like quantum physics and all these other things. So
yeah. I don't know. It'd be cool to prove. I actually had an idea for a short story a while back that I started writing and it didn't really pan out, but where you could go into a kind of a lucid dream and then
Hmm.
step in and out of different realities. So you'd have people changing realities, but once you got killed, like that was it. Like your existence
Oh,
was gone.
yeah.
And there were too many things that could poke holes in it where it was just kind of ridiculous. But I mean, imagine if I could go to sleep now and then wake up and suddenly, like, I'm the same age and everything, but I'm in, say, Los Angeles, and I'm running from some drug runners or something, and then you go back to
Yeah.
sleep, and then finally find a reality you want to sit in. I feel like a lot of people would like something like that.
Sure.
Um,
Well, yeah,
it just
it certainly fires up the imagination. Go ahead.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting thought exercise, like maybe motivational too. Like, what can I do to create a better reality for myself? I'm sure some people take it too far with like mental illness and stuff like that, but um, I don't know. It's a cool theory. The Mandela Effect is an interesting thing to watch, especially with, and it. I would love to see a better explanation as to why people share that kind of delusion. I think a lot of it comes down to just not really being educated, or the way the
Yeah.
internet works, where like one person can say, "Oh, this is a fact," and then nobody really goes and researches it. They just go, "Oh, well, you know, uh, X Lily 560 said that say it was Berenstein, not Berenstein, and I don't
Yeah.
care enough to look into it. So we'll just go with that." And then, kind of like a game of telephone, it cascades, and, more people start to believe that kind of thing. And in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, it's kind of how the Q anon thing is. Like
Hmm.
guy says something and people follow it. And then, as time goes on, it gets twisted around and
Yeah.
then back again. And so it could be, in a way, that is also gaslighting, and I guess it could be used for good or evil. But
Sure.
most
Well,
of the time, it's used just to get more clicks and advertising revenue. So,
y- you bring up an interesting point about everybody having the same delusion. What's interesting about excuse me, what's interesting about this to me is that they're spread apart and it happens over time. When people are in a group, I can understand a delusion happening. And a good example of this is where people seem to watch statues move,
right,
and they all simultaneously, oh, the arm moved or whatever.
or
And
the painting that can follow you with its eyes.
yes. And what happens in those situations is normally when you have an event, like let's say somebody says some statue of Mary moves, you have a bunch of people go out to this thing and they want to see it happen. They're believers. So that's a big part of this. I mean, they are motivated to have something happen that validates their beliefs.
Oh, look at
The
North
other,
Korea too, like Kim Jong Il,
yeah,
doing like going golfing and getting like 16 hole in ones out of 18. And I mean, well,
yeah,
I guess if you spoke out and say, "Hey, that's kind of stupid," you're going to get shot. But
yeah,
a lot of the people in North Korea believe that their leader is some kind of deity or some kind
yeah,
of god who has these
yeah,
fantastical powers and he can do it. And if you
yeah,
look at like other cults such as like Heaven's Gate, or um, that one that the celebrities just got busted in. I can't
y-
remember the name of right now.
I, I'm not sure
Well,
what that is.
a bunch of it was Xvidea or something like that.
Okay,
It had a bunch of like Roman numerals in it.
okay,
But they all, like, that group of people will all share the same like shared delusion of their leader being like a reincarnation of God,
yeah,
or also have fantastical superpowers, or be able to predict that, like, say aliens are coming on a comet.
sure.
Um,
And,
it's
and
it's
well,
the fact that even before it was named, was used and has been used all throughout human history. It's why major religions like Christianity and Islam and Buddhism exist, for
yeah.
example.
Well, like I said with the statue, I can even understand how it happens simultaneously because you have a bunch of people out there going out there to validate their beliefs. They're out
Hmm.
there for a period of time. They get tired. Night falls. You have light producing shadows on the statue. You have other things happening, and just the fact nobody can stand perfectly still. So when you're standing in the darkness over a distance, looking at an object that has shadows and stuff, you're moving just a little bit, and all it takes is one person to say, "Oh, look," and the next
Right.
thing you know, everybody saw it. So I can understand that happening. What I can't in this situation here is everybody having the same delusion, all of them separated, and all of them over a period of time. And here again, we can only, I guess, theorize that whether it be in pop culture or media or what have you, the right cues are being set up, maybe not purposely, but they're just being set up to where people have they make certain presumptions, and then as the years go by, these presumptions in their mind turn into something that really happened.
Right. It's
Th-
also
that-
why eyewitness testimony is also so horribly
oh,
unreliable.
absolutely, sure.
Like the Boston bombing, when they everybody claimed, is this one guy or this other guy, but a lot of people, for the most part, couldn't even think of like what they ate for breakfast that day. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
if I were to ask you like what you ate for breakfast today, and then I asked your wife, are you going to have the same answer?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right. You're
or
exactly right.
say we were going to talk about like amounts, like did you have one bowl of cereal or two, or and what would
Exactly.
your wife say? Like, oh, he only had one, but and that's another way that little bits of brand, like two people will see the same thing, but they'll see it differently,
Yes.
which is why cameras existing on everybody's phones nowadays is a bit more of a beneficial thing. Like you almost
Y-
kind of wonder how many
Absolutely.
people got falsely accused, thrown in jail, or even executed, all throughout human history up until we all
Yeah.
had these phones. Because,
Yeah.
somebody said this or somebody said they saw that and they
Yeah.
didn't care about the conflicting reports.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know what the laws are in the United States. It's hard to get the death penalty for nothing being convicted on nothing other than eyewitness testimony. There has to be physical evidence or something else involved. But yes, you're right. I don't doubt that. People have been falsely put in prison, or in some cases, maybe even executed, based upon people having these simultaneous, sometimes false impressions or false memories. That's something that and I sometimes wonder too, just like you have the domino effect watching the statue move, if a bunch of witnesses find out that a certain person is testifying a certain way, then the dominoes all fall and they say, "Oh yeah, that is the guy," type thing.
mhm.
So that's something that the justice system has to be on top of and reevaluating all the time because how we perceive things. Any officer who's ever taken witness testimony at a car accident will
Right.
tell you that people see different things.
Oh, of course. Because no
And
one was at fault. The other guy did it. You know,
exactly. So
it's rare you have somebody, go, oh, yeah, it's my fault. Call my insurance company and bone me real quick.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, getting into the last third of the program here, the UFO things, and this kind of ties into that too. Um, it's interesting. UFOs, the rumors of them have been around for a long time. I would have to say they hit their height during the 1950s with a lot of the science fiction movies that were popular at the time. And of course, alien invasion movies have always been relatively successful for the most part. And certainly space science fiction has been, very successful. So, um, a lot of the UFO sightings up until, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago were readily dismissed as other things or people's imaginations or what have you. But now, over the past couple of years, we have had the United States government saying that, hey, yep, there's something going on out there. We don't know what it is. There was a very intriguing, I believe you saw the 60 Minutes report.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I
where they
actually watched all the bonus stuff too, like the
okay.
extra interviews and everything, and it was fascinating, man.
It
Like,
was very fascinating, and just to let the audience know, this was where a number of fighter pilots, who are trained and other things. They're not, standing out in the middle of the cornfield with, half a keg of moonshine. They're flying
this isn't the
around where
guy you see screaming on the street corner about God.
yeah,
I mean, you know,
yes. These are people who are highly trained. They're flying well, a lot of these fighter planes, if you count the development of them, are $1 billion in aircraft. And they have all this technology, and they're tracking items both with infrared and other means.
not
That
only
there's
that, but they all have 20/20 vision.
yeah,
There's no like they have you have to have perfect eyesight to be a military pilot.
yeah, especially yeah, sure. And so anyway, what I am concerned about is me personally. I'm not that worried that they're aliens. I'm not there yet. Okay. I don't believe at this time that we can make that jump, just like we can't make the jump about spirituality affecting the physical world. I just don't know that we can make that jump yet. Saying that there's intelligent life operating these things logically to me doesn't make sense, but logically doesn't mean anything. Logically is not proof. But if these beings, let's say, are this advanced and they want to observe us without being seen, why are we seeing them at all? Okay. And if they do want to be seen, what's stopping them from landing on the 50-yard line during halftime at the Super Bowl? I don't know. So I don't believe that they're necessarily alien craft. The one fighter pilot kind of goes with me on this, that he kind of feels that it does have a human advanced technology feel to it. And there was a time in, let's say, in the 1950s, the 1960s, you could make the statement, well, if the United States doesn't know what it is, it has to be something else because nobody else could do this. That's
Right.
not true anymore. We do not have a lock on technology like we once did. We are probably the premier country and culture for selfies and social media and posting, pictures of all the little funny, cute faces on Instagram. We got that locked down. Okay.
Don't forget dancing like a jackass in the middle of the mall on TikTok.
Oh yeah, can't forget that. But I'll tell you, finding new ways to fly, probably not so much. Okay, there's other people who are investing in technology, China and certainly Russia and others. So the notion, and this is what I would say, even the most advanced jet, one of these $1 billion aircraft projects, still uses the basic principles that the Wright brothers had, in that
Yep.
you have an airfoil, you run air across it, it lifts the wing up. Actually, it's the wind. The song says the wind beneath my wings, but it's actually the other way around.
Yep. The wind
Uh,
over.
the wind over your wings lifts you up. And that's how the most advanced fighter works. No different. That it's just perfecting the same design that the Wright brothers and other people of the time, there were other people that were very close to getting that done during the Wright brothers time. So that design has been with us for 120 years, let's say. So it's not that far reaching to me that somebody somewhere said, hey, we can do this other ways. We know enough about gravity now that we did not know 100 years ago. We know enough about aerodynamics that we didn't understand 100 years ago. There's things about electromagnetism and other things that we didn't understand 100 years ago. We can make this fly another way. Okay. And it isn't that far reaching to me that China or some other uh, organization or country or what have you, with the resources, technology, and the willpower to come up with something, a surveillance craft of some kind that doesn't have the traditional wings and propeller, jet, or whatever else that's on it. Even missile technology, rocket technology, a lot of that is descended from Nazi technology at the end of World War II. There hasn't been anything revolutionary done in terms of how things fly in a long time. And if anything, we're overdue. So I would have to say that I do believe there's something out there. I don't believe we can ignore them because of what the pilot said, that this could be something that potentially is a security risk.
Right.
And I believe it should be taken seriously and investigated. But for everybody to just run off with this and say, "Oh, it's aliens," I'm not there yet. That's not to say that I'm saying it's impossible. This is possible. This could be something literally from out of this world. And I wouldn't discount that, because just like Einstein said, when you discount possibilities in this kind of scenario, you're setting yourself up to make a mistake. So we have to just go where the evidence leads us. Do you have an opinion about what these things are?
Oh, the one object, the one that kind of turned. It was like a sphere, had like kind of the rim around it.
Yeah.
Looked a little bit like it could be like a commercial drone or something like that. A little
Yeah.
bit to me, because you know how you've seen how the things fly, right? Like the ones
Yes.
that are kind of helicoptery, and how they
Yeah.
do kind of tilt like back and forth as they fly through the air, as you like make them move or make them turn, stuff like that. I mean, supposedly it's a lot bigger than one of those drones would be, and I can't see a civilian, inventing something like that and not trying to profit off of it, especially the way the
Sure.
object move. Um, I think personally it's probably just another country's like surveillance drone or something. I mean, it
Yeah.
would make more sense that way. Another theory I have is that it's actually beings from the Hollow Earth where Hitler and Elvis live, just
There
wanting
you
to make a
go.
comeback. But yeah, I look at these things and I don't know what they are, but they are kind of fascinating. Like that one object that went, so what was it, 38 miles in less than like 3 seconds or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible speed that even our like top known fighter jets can't match.
Sure.
So, and also you got to figure like we can break the sound barrier, we can't break the light barrier yet.
Yes.
So, and you
Yeah.
would think that breaking a light barrier would also create a shock wave that would be kind of like a sonic boom that would do
Oh,
some
yeah.
damage. So, I don't know, man. It's weird. I'm looking forward to seeing what this report says. I've already seen, people in government saying like, "Oh, it's not aliens." That's the one thing we'll say about it right now. But and of course they're going to say that because if they were to come out and say, "Oh yeah, it actually is extraterrestrials," then I mean, you're looking at breaking down the social order a lot. At least among the people who pay attention and aren't on Twitter and
I
TikTok all day.
I kind of wonder. I don't know. That if you would have said that 30 years ago, I would say, yeah, boy, that would really send a shockwave through the world. But I'm
Right.
not so sure now. I
I
honestly
don't
don't
think
think. I kind
people's
of
attention
wonder.
spans
Still,
have gotten a
still,
lot shorter.
people would still be looking at bare asses on on Instagram or whatever. And
Hey, now
as
stop insulting my hobbies.
Yeah, and I can't say that I'm not guilty because I'm guilty, but I do other things. I mean, I do get out in the world, actually do other things.
I can picture
Um,
someone being like, "Oh, aliens, that's nice. Wonder what Kim
yeah,
K's doing today."
yeah. Well, what is Kim Kardashian? What is and the biggest thing on the internet within the last week or so was that Logan Paul and Merriweather fight, which was when the amount of money that was involved in that for nothing but a big show. It's just, oh my. But anyway, that's
I
what
feel like if
people are
Logan Paul
interested
would
in.
have taken a full haymaker from Floyd Mayweather, he would be missing teeth and would not have
Yeah,
gotten up from that. That whole thing was staged.
yeah,
I watched it.
yeah. It was a joke, but what I'm getting at is, unless Logan Paul gets on the spaceship on YouTube, nobody's gonna care.
Wait, can
But
we send
anyway,
Logan Paul into space? Is that a thing we can do? Can we
oh,
send
that'd be
Jake Paul
great. One.
too? Can we just fire them right into the sun?
Yeah,
The
we'll
world would be
tell
a
the
better
aliens.
place, Billy.
Send these guys right into the sun. Yeah, yeah. All right, that's funny.
We can
But
just
anyway,
like call it a scientific inquiry to see how long like humans can live, like or how close to the sun humans can live, and then just drop them in there and
yeah, see what happens.
have a better world.
Yeah. Or as you've heard about what's that called, spaghettification, and that is where
Yeah,
you
yeah.
get you get so close to a black hole. And this is true. You get so close to a black hole, the gravity is so strong, it doesn't just like pull you apart like your arms. You actually, your body becomes a stream of atoms. Just go straight into the black hole. So
Can we do that
it's
with
been
Pokemon?
yeah. One of the things we talked about today, I'm going to have to touch on it. There is a national criteria on who can get the death penalty based upon what evidence. That would be an interesting thing to find out. So we talked about a lot of things today. The Mandela Effect. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. False memories. All of them are legitimate phenomena. And if you have an opinion about any of these things, go ahead and tweet us. Real easy to find on Twitter. My account is at Billy Dees on Twitter, and that's kind of like my social media home. Pretty much all of my accounts to one thing or another are linked in my bio there. You can also find the Billy Dees podcast on YouTube and also find it on Facebook. Of course, we're on all the major podcasting networks, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. That is where the vast majority of the listens come from is those two, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but we're on a lot of them. We're on TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and we appreciate every single listen, no matter where you're listening to us from. But what I was leading into was that there's a general level that we pretty much always get in terms of listens, and it fluctuates a little bit. I mean, if I have a celebrity on the program or something like that, it kicks up a little bit. But I on the audio platforms, there's a real steadiness there. And I made the YouTube channel so that people would have a chance to check out some of the videos, check out some of the guests, and so on. And I just don't, I can't figure this out, Jack. There's some episodes that I've done that I put on YouTube that have like 100 views, and then there's another
Mhm.
one right next to it that has like 5,000. You would you would think that
How many
episodes
views have
that
I gotten? 3?
no, it depends. These are consumed largely. In all honesty, the live views are consumed mostly live, and then except when I go and I create the audio version and put it online,
Right.
it does very well the following week. All of these when you come on, they do very well.
Well, part
But
of it might be YouTube's notification system. I have
yeah, I
noticed
don't
this.
know.
I'm subscribed to you and I have the bell rung, okay?
Yeah,
And half of the time I don't get a notification that you posted a video. Like I'll
really.
see it when I go on the front page and I'll see, Billy D, like the one that you did recently,
Yeah.
about the crime in Florida.
Yes.
I got no notification for that, but it popped up. It was like halfway down the front page and I was scrolling through.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could be that. And the thing is, I'm subscribed to all notifications, so anything that you do on YouTube like should come to me, but it doesn't.
I
So
sometimes
I mean,
wonder
that
too.
might be part of it. A lot of other YouTubers complain about that too. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it's a known phenomenon.
Okay, well, I
Um,
guess I'm not alone then. I don't feel so bad.
yeah.
But anyway, you can find us any of those places. Now, Jack is on Twitter. Now he's kind of a newbie to Twitter. But he is JackCasey 8542 on Twitter. And Jack is kind of getting into photography, and he's been putting some of his pictures on Twitter. So say hello to Jack. Do you have any parting words for the audience before we go?
Oh, not really. Just keep in mind, everybody else's reality might not necessarily be your own. So
That's correct.
act accordingly, or
That's right.
else.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
no, I enjoyed coming on like always, and I hope all of our listeners have a good week. And until the next time I see you.
All right.
And we didn't get into a heated debate this time, so we're not going an hour and a half. So
Yeah, that's a good thing. I want to say, first of all, Jack, you're always a great co-host. We have a number of co-hosts. If you're new to the program, we have a number of co-hosts that come and go. Jack is probably one of the more regular ones. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we have found a certain niche here for stories of trauma and recovery, and we have a couple of those coming up, and those are going to be on. And also for a publisher, we are going to have a couple of authors on the program, and Dave Jaffe is up first. He's going to be on within the next couple of weeks. I'm not exactly sure. Depends on what his publisher wants to do, but Sleeping Between Giants, and it's his subtitle is Life, if you can call it that, with a Terrier. It's a humor book, obviously. It's a fun book. We're going to be talking to Dave coming up real soon. All those things are coming up right here in the Billy Dees podcast. So do go ahead and subscribe and make sure you check us out every week. I'm Billy Dees. For my buddy JackCasey and I, thank you very much for listening to the podcast, and we will see you again, or you will hear us anyway, next week.
see ya.